10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 373. Hey everybody, welcome back to the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. This is episode 373. It's the last episode of the month, so you know what that means. We are going to be doing our tune of the month. And this month, we're going to take a look at a really fun and interesting jazz standard called Bernie's Tune. But before we jump into the show, as usual, just wanted to let you know that this is a listener-supported podcast, which means that we don't do any advertisements or anything like that on the show. Instead, we rely on listeners just like you to support the show in the form of a small monthly donation. We use the Patreon platform for that, and in return for that small donation, you do get a PDF and audio examples with every single episode, which means that there's 373 PDFs and examples and stuff like that over on that website. So you get quite a bit in return for that small monthly donation. So if you do want to become a supporter, simply go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners and get yourself signed up today. Or you can go to patreon.com and just search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast and sign up that way. I wanted to give a quick shout out to our new $5 patrons. Thank you to Randy, Rachel, Mark, Lena, and Jason. And also a quick shout out to our new $3 patrons. Thank you to Roy, Daniel, Ruth, and Sullivan. Thank you all so much for joining up to be a part of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson family. And of course, to everybody else that's been supporting us for months, years. Thank you. We could not do this show without you. So if you want to join up, remember, go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, or you can go to patreon.com and search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. As soon as you get signed up, you'll get instant access to everything over there. All right, let's jump into today's episode. So as I mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at Bernie's Tune as our tune of the month this month. And this tune has kind of an interesting history to it. So first of all, it was written in 1952 by a composer named Bernie Miller. And there's really not that much information out there about Bernie Miller. Now, the tune was made famous by particularly Gerry Mulligan, but also Lee Konitz, Mel Torme, Shelly Manne, Art Pepper. So a lot of really, really famous musicians played and recorded this tune, but actually, interestingly, Gerry Mulligan actually said he never met Bernie Miller. And there's not that much information out there about him. In fact, there's a really great Gerry Mulligan quote where Gerry Mulligan says, "Bernie Miller wrote Bernie's Tune, but I never knew him. As far as I know, he was a piano player from Washington, D.C., and I think he had died by the time I encountered any of his tunes. He had a melodic touch, and he wrote a couple of other pieces that musicians like to play." So it's interesting that most jazz musicians know of this tune and play it, and it's an accepted jazz standard, but we don't know that much about Bernie Miller besides this composition. So there's a little history behind the tune, but if you want to go out and listen to some of the first recordings, I suggest going out and finding the Gerry Mulligan recording. I believe Chet Baker's on that, and that's a great, great recording. All right, let's dive in and actually analyze some of this tune because it is actually a pretty simple composition. First of all, it's 32 bars. Second of all, it is AABA, and it's in the key of D minor. And because of the fact that it's AABA, we see a lot of repeating harmonic and melodic information for that matter. So let's just talk about the chord progression real quick. Let's start with the A section because that's going to cover 3/4 of the tune. So we start with a simple D minor chord, which is the 1 chord in this key that we're in. And then something really interesting happens. I think this is sort of like the crux of the tune here, is that we get 2 bars of D minor, the 1 chord, and then we go to this B flat 7 sharp 11 chord, which is a really interesting chord because you could think about it as being sort of the flat 6 in the key of D minor. And listen to how it sounds when we go from the D minor chord to the B flat 7 sharp 11. Very interesting chord movement. I would say when we go to that B flat 7 sharp 11, it brings out all of the blues elements in the key of D minor, because we get this really nice A flat in there, which is really going to connotate a bluesy sound in the key of D minor. So that's the first 4 bars. It's just that D minor chord for 2 bars to that B flat. And then we very simply have a 2, 5, 1 in the key of D minor starting in bar 5. So we have 2, E minor 7 flat 5, 2, 5, A 7, and then we go right back to D minor 7. And then at the end of the first A section, we simply just play a 2, 5 to bring us back around to the top of the second A section. So actually really, really simple, easy to memorize, easy to hear. Awesome. I love it when it works out that way. Second A section is exactly the same until the last bar. And then what we are doing on the bridge is we are modulating to the key of B flat major. And we get there, the bar before the bridge, by playing a 2, 5 to that key. So C minor 7 to F7 to B flat major. Okay. And then we simply play a 1, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression 3 times. And that's what the bridge is. So 1, 6, 2, 5. Then we do it again. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, 6, 2, 5. And then we hang out on 1. And then we have a 2, 5. That brings us back to the key of D minor. And that's going to be our last A section, which is exactly the same as the first A section. So really, at the end of the day, a very, very simple chord progression that you should be able to learn pretty quick. The melody is also extremely catchy on this tune, so I would recommend learning the melody kind of right away. And remember, learn it from a recording. Don't find a lead sheet for it. Go out and actually learn it by ear. And that's the way that it's really going to stick. And that's the way that you're going to remember this for a long period of time, forever, hopefully. Okay? All right. So now with the etude, what I tried to do was just, first of all, write a musical etude. That is always my number one goal. And that is always the first thing that I have in mind, is to write something that makes sense and is musical and is kind of fun to play. But then the other thing that I tried to do in this particular etude is work in a few of those intervallic concepts that we talked about. Now, I tried not to really overload it with that, because then it wouldn't be a musical etude at the end of the day. But I did try to throw in a couple of things that we talked about in terms of direction and mixing up some of those intervals that we discussed all throughout these past 2 months. So your job is going to be to look for those, but mostly what I want you to do is use this etude as a learning tool to learn this tune, understand the sound of it, maybe give you some germs of ideas that you can start working on over this. But there is some of that intervallic stuff mixed in there. So let's check out the etude. All right, so there you have it. I hope you have fun with that. Remember, if you want to get your hands on that etude, you will get a PDF in every key. You will also get a demo recording that you just heard. You will also get a backing track for Bernie's tune. And you can find all of that by supporting us on Patreon, making sure this show keeps coming out week after week in high quality. And you can do that by going to 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, and getting yourself signed up today. thank you so much to everybody that's supporting us. It means the world to me that I can keep doing this show through your support. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, hope you're all doing well out there, staying safe and healthy, and we will see you next time with another episode. Talk to you soon, everybody. Bye.